So the first time my wife and I had this experience together with one of these things, the second time, and I'm going to give you details of both experiences, and they've happened just in the last 2 months. But the first time my wife and I were at this exact spot on our property when we saw one, we call this location Hilltop Bar. It's like something just between us. It's at one of the high points on our property. We like to sit up here and in the summer watch the fireflies at night. We watch the stars all year round. But that was late October, and autumn was in its full bloom as far as the coloration of leaves go. So we were sitting up here after a long, hard day of work. I was enjoying a cold one, and she was enjoying her coconut water she likes to drink up here. Our son was down here in the field doing some football drills. He had his cone set up. He was throwing the football. We've got a very commanding view from this location. We can see the neighbors' cows. We can see the mountains around us. And our son had gone inside, so he was not affected. He was not outside. He was in the house, but it was a beautiful sunset. The leaves had that autumn glow to them in the twilight of the soon-to-be evening. So my wife and I continued to sit here, again, what we call Hilltop Bar, and suddenly this light appeared, like right here. And I thought it was Mars, which typically you can see first in the evening, but Mars is always over here. So I knew it wasn't the planet Mars. And I looked at that and I said, "What is that?" And my wife says, "Well, I think it's a star." And I said, "Well, no, it's not. The first thing you can see is Mars." And as a matter of fact, we looked over to where Mars was supposed to be and we couldn't yet see Mars. And she says, "Well, maybe it's an airplane." And I said, "Well, if it's an airplane, why isn't it moving? And why isn't it blinking?" It was a solid light. Now listen, here's the difference. This is how you can tell the difference between an airplane and a satellite in the sky. Airplanes have some sort of flashing blinker light, and that's a warning to other aircraft, and that's makes the aircraft more visible, makes it safer. When you see a satellite, there is no blinking, and you're actually not seeing a light at all. What you're seeing is the sun's reflection off of that satellite. So it's a constant light, but it does constantly move. Satellites do not hover. They orbit. They have a specific orbit, so they're constantly moving. Now, when they get to the turnaround spot, for the just trying to use layman terms here, I do have a science background, it may appear as if that satellite is hovering very momentarily, but then you'll see it going in a different direction. This was not the case. That light was stationary for a full 5 minutes, and then it came right at us, almost as if it were going to land in our field where our son had just recently been playing football before he went in the house at dark. And then it passed right over top of us, and by this time it was dark enough to what most folks would say dark. And as a matter of fact, once it got over, I looked over to where Mars was supposed to be, and Mars was there. So Mars was there. So this thing comes directly over our head, makes no sound. Listen closely. You can hear an airplane right now. We don't live too far away from our local airport, and if we go in that direction, you hit Richmond International Airport in Richmond, Virginia, and you hit Dulles and Reagan International if you go north from here, directly due north, okay? So we're used to the sounds of airplanes like we're hearing right now. There was no sound, there was no blinking lights. Satellites do not hover. Whatever this was, it hovered for a full 5 minutes, then it was gone, just in time for Mars to come out. I'm going to tell you in just a few minutes how that physically and medically affected my wife and I for the next 3 days from having that experience. But now we're going to go to location number 2, where I had a similar experience by myself without my wife about 1 week ago. And it was a conversation I had with a close friend of mine 2 or 3 days later, where he experienced exact same physical and medical symptoms as me that made me go online, do my research, and find this dire warning from a former U.S. Air Force engineer. Okay, this is the second location where I had my second and thus far last, hopefully, experience with one of these things. You can see behind me, this is one of the places we keep a lot of our firewood. We have several different firewood locations. We have a garden inside of a deer netting here to protect it from the deer. This is where we keep our quails. So approximately 1 week ago, I came out here after dark. It's winter. As a matter of fact, as of this recording, December 21, it's a winter solstice. This is the shortest day of the year. So it wasn't late. It was probably 5:30 p.m. It was dark, however, and I realized we didn't quite have enough firewood inside the house to get us through the night. So I brought one of my totally awesome Beaver carts out to get a load of firewood to take into the house to get us through the night. I came out and I had uncovered the firewood just like I did this morning when I came out earlier and got some more firewood. I pulled the tarp back and stood there and noticed up in the sky, like right around this point, there was a light. It's just exactly like the light my wife and I had seen there at the end of October from up at our hilltop bar. Now, here's the deal. It was a completely overcast sky. It was dark. I couldn't see the sky, but there were no stars. And earlier in the day, just before dark, when I had been outside, I noticed it was complete cloud cover. So it was not a star. Mars would be way over there, but it would have been covered by clouds anyway. It's hunting season right now, so you're hearing some of my neighbors probably just bagged a big buck back there. But some of my neighbors who actually are country and live a country lifestyle, and who are prepared for all threats, be they domestic or foreign. So anyway, I see this light and I'm staring at it. And I got my wood, I went in the house, and then the next day, I had almost exactly the same physical and medical type symptoms, but they were much worse. Okay, my wife was not with me out here that time. Nobody was with me. So my wife and my son, he was never affected because he never saw it either time. My wife was not affected. This time it was only me. This light was not a satellite. It was not moving slowly. It was not aircraft because it didn't blink. And again, if it were a satellite, it would not have remained stationary for that long. I watched it for about a full 2 minutes, and once I realized it wasn't moving, and I remembered back to October when I had that previous experience, I almost ran into the house because I didn't want to have happen what would happen to me over the course of the next 3 days. Now, let me go to another location, and I'm going to tell you specifically how my wife and I were affected after we saw one of these things the first time, how I was specifically and exactly affected when I saw one alone 1 week ago, and I'm going to share with you the information I found from a former U.S. Air Force engineer online in regard to what is potentially going on in regard to these things. Too many people are seeing, yet nobody is being given any answers for what we are seeing. So what were the physical effects I alluded to that both my wife and I experienced when we saw this thing together? And then what effects were the physical and medical outcome on myself when I saw one just last week alone? So when my wife and I saw one together, again, at the end of October, the next day, I felt as if I had what I'm going to refer to as the little C, okay? It's a particular virus, and social media is very fickle. Sometimes you can say the word and they don't care, but then sometimes you can say the word and they'll unmonetize your content or delete the video or maybe even remove your channel. I don't know what mood social media is in today, so I'm going to use the term little c. And I know that you're smart folks, you're picking up what I'm laying down. Listen, folks who watch my content on social media are smarter, happier, and more entertaining to be with than folks who do not watch my content on social media, according to a poll I just made up. So I know you're picking up what I'm laying down. For the next 3 days, I had muscle pains, I had a low-grade fever. Sometimes these symptoms would go away and I would feel just fine, and I would go out and do something like maybe start to split firewood or just walk around the property to maybe check on the honeybees or the quails or the fruit orchards. We had some late season fruit still being bared at that time. It was late October. But then all of a sudden, bam, I was so exhausted. I felt like I'd just run 10 or 12 miles, and I'm a runner, so I know that feeling. And I would have to go in the house and lay down and take a nap. This lasted for 3 days, and I was convinced I had the little C. I've had it twice. It felt very similar to that. Now, my wife, and I'm not trying to be gross, this is medical terminology. For 3 days, she felt as if she was beginning her menstrual cycle. And what was odd about it was that she had just finished it. And so we had concerns for her that she might be having some sort of female medical condition. And we had actually called our doctor to set an appointment. Now, on the 4th day, I was miraculously recovered. I had no symptoms of anything, nor did my wife, and we canceled her doctor's appointment. It was the strangest thing. To this day, I can't explain it. Now, let's go to scenario number 2. When I was out just 1 week ago getting firewood to burn that night inside the house, my wife wasn't with me, our son was inside. I saw it by myself. The next day, and for 3 days in totality, I thought I was going to die. I had never felt that bad in my life. It was worse. The first time I had the little C, it was pretty rough, and I lost my sense of smell and taste for 3 months. When I lived in the Philippines, I had dengue fever on top of bronchitis, and I was in a hospital for 4 days. I thought I was going to die that time. What I had last week, whatever it was, felt worse than that, and at one point, I almost went to the ER. On the 4th day, I woke up feeling as if I could go out and run 10 or 12 miles. And as a matter of fact, I did go out and do a speed workout. That's where you do multiple sprints over and over with very short recovery in between. I hadn't felt that good in ages. So here's why I started digging. It wasn't just because of my experience, but that particular day was a day in which that evening we had basketball practice. I'm a head basketball coach for a youth organization. I've got a couple of assistant coaches who are wonderful gentlemen. Great group of kids. There's another coach I know I've been friends with for a long time. We've coached together off and on throughout the years. He's a close personal friend of mine. He is a master of defense on basketball, particularly the zone. And we've been struggling to get my kids on our team to be able to switch from a typical box zone into a 2-3 or a 3-2 when we scream it out, because they're trying to figure out, okay, now where do I go? They're middle school age kids. So I contacted this coach. I texted him. I said, hey, coach, we've got practice tonight. Can you come and help me work with these kids on that zone defense? Because I've never seen anybody explain it the way you do. And that's true. He can explain it one time, and it can be kids that never even played basketball before, and they've got it, okay? He texts back, and he says, Coach, thanks for the invite, and I'd love to come, but I am sick as a dog. And this was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and our practice it's late. It's not until 7. He says, I fell asleep at noon, and I just woke up. And I texted back, and we had this conversation going, and I let him know that I recently felt bad too. And I said, maybe something's going around. Have you heard anything about anything that's going around? And he says, Coach, call me crazy, but I think it's from the drones. And I said, what? He sent me a screenshot that he had taken just a few days before, which would have coincided with the specific night that I was outside getting firewood when I saw that light in the sky, whatever it was. Somebody that lives halfway between he and I, okay? He lives, as the crow flies, it's probably 16 miles away. He's got a friend, a gentleman I don't know, but I may be talking to very soon, that lives right in the middle of us. It's about 8 miles away. He told me where the guy lives. I drive by this guy's house on my way to basketball practice, okay? This guy saw one of those things in the sky, took a picture and put it on his Facebook account and said, what is this? And it may have been the very same one that I saw. I don't know. So I start digging around because I've just heard talk of this here recently, but I don't know what people are talking about. And I'm thinking, it's just another conspiracy theory or whatever. And I don't buy into just flat, straight out conspiracy theories. I'm entertained by them. But let me tell you, as someone, and I'm speaking to myself, who did serve in the military, who did have a security clearance, and who did have to sign non-disclosure agreements throughout my career, especially in certain locations that still, some of these disclosures will not lapse until 25 years after certain presidents who are still not very old and very healthy have died. And they make you do that because they know more than likely you're going to be long dead as well before the non-disclosure agreement expires. So, with that said, I start digging around and I find some information online. I'm finding reports on legacy media outlets about this stuff. I start going through the comments because clearly the government isn't telling us anything. the folks who are supposed to be in the know aren't telling us anything. And I saw one snippet. I watched multiple outlets. Listen, I'm not biased. I'm not political. I want to know the facts. Give me the facts and let me make my mind up. So I'll watch snippets from CNN, and then I'll watch a snippet from Fox News. I'll watch the BBC, MSNBC, PBS, NPR. I want to gather as much information as I can because all of these organizations slant it the way they want to have it slanted. And then I try to figure out where in this junk might there be some facts. And usually it's in the comment section. So I'm going to share with you now a comment that I got from one of those legacy media outlets. I can't remember specifically which one this was, but this was left 7 days ago, and it wasn't some corny name like some of the emails I get. It's just some person with a very anonymous type user ID and this came from a YouTube channel. So here's what he says. I don't want to step on anybody's toes in the government or anything, but I served a bit in the U.S. Air Force, worked as an engineer in defense contracting, and basically in national security, everything provocative and unidentified is considered a threat until identified and determined otherwise. And as a combat veteran who served in Iraq as a machine gunner, I can confirm that that's a fact. For those of you who never served in the military, that's just a simple, basic fact, okay? These incompetent people are doing the exact opposite of instilling confidence in the American people. Just acknowledge it's happening and present a strategy to confront the problem. If you cannot do that, then you need to step down immediately. And I'm not saying I'm the expert here either. I just know this basic fact. When you really look at what happened here in Western North Carolina after Helene, the response to these drones, the genocides, Ukraine, and the total inability of these people to stop insurers from murdering 50,000 Americans every year, I think we need to start talking about the Declaration of Independence. This absolutely is a threat. If they don't know what the drones are, can't oppose them, and have no plan to oppose them other than more gaslighting of the American public. If that's all they have, then we need to replace the government. We pay taxes for literally nothing but our deaths. So folks, there you have it. Them's the facts. Those were my two honest to the God of your understanding or choosing truth of the first time I experienced it along with my wife. Both of us became very ill over the next few days, but had a miraculous recovery on the fourth day. Then when I experienced it by myself just last week, same thing. And then a friend of mine who lives 16 miles away who saw one that night, and I left that out of our conversation. He mentioned having seen the light, and one of his buddies got a picture of it, put it on Facebook. My buddy experienced the same thing. And as of now, as a matter of fact, this morning, that's why I got the idea for this video. He said, hey, coach, I'm 100% now. Can I come to your next practice and help your kids with that zone defense? I said, yes, glad to hear you're better, coach. Absolutely want you there. That's all I got for you, folks. Let me know what you think's going on in the comment section below. Again, it's a winter solstice, so if I don't see you again between now and then, Merry Christmas to all of you. I hope you're enjoying time with your family. See you for more next time.